In this lesson, you should use the Map Tour app that you made in the last lesson. Once you find that project, you should do Save Project As and save it under a new name, for example, Map Tour TinyDB. The user interface is pretty much finished, but you want to add a label to the top that says something like press and hold to add a new destination to give instructions to the user. We also need a notifier, and this will pop up an alert box telling the user that their destination has been added. And we need, under the storage drawer, a TinyDB database. There are two versions here, TinyDB and TinyWebDB, so make sure you grab the TinyDB, which is the local database that's saved in your device. So now we're ready to go to blocks. From last time, remember that we had these two lists, a list of destinations and their corresponding latitudes and longitudes that we used on the map. So now what we want to do is add to both of these lists. If you click on Map, there is an event handler called long press at point. So when the user presses at a point in the map, this will return the latitude and the longitude where they pressed. This is great because we can save this now in our destination lat long list. So if we go over to the lists drawer, here we find a lot of operations that you can use with lists. And one of the basic ones is add item to list. So this is what we want. And the list that we want to add to is our destinations lat long list. The item that we want to add is a text string where it's the latitude and then a comma and then the longitude. So let's build that using the text join block. Here's the text join block, and we need three things in here. So let's click on the blue mutator button and add another string. So what we want is the latitude, followed by a text block with a comma in it, and then the longitude. So this will build the text string like these ones and add that to the list as the third item in the list. But notice it doesn't add the name of the destination to the destinations list. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can ask the user what the name is. So if we go down to Notifier, here there's all kinds of dialog boxes that pop up. You want to be careful with these. You don't want to overuse and pop up too many things, but it is good to show alerts sometimes, temporary alerts. And these are also good for debugging your programs. And the dialog box that we want this time is show text dialog. So this will pop up a little box where the user can actually type in something. So we need to tell them what to type in. So I'm going to put some text blocks in here and say something like enter location name, and the title of the box can just be location name or something like that. Okay, and this show text dialog actually has two parts. One, it pops up a box and waits for the user to type in something. Once they hit enter, then it calls the event handler after text input. So grab that. This is under Notifier as well. So after text input, it returns the response. What did the user type in? It's in this variable response. Okay, so they type in something like the location name Central Park, and we want to add that to our destinations list. So go back to the list drawer and grab one of those add to lists. Add items to list. This time we want this first list, destinations, and the item we want is just the response of the user, get response. So now we've added to both lists. Let's test it. So here's my app running. If I go and find Central Park in New York, here it is, and I long press there, it pops up my notifier. Notice here's the title and the message that I typed in. So I can type in Central Park when I hit OK, it's going to call the event handler after text input. And it will now add it to the destinations list. And there it is. Now Central Park is in my list. We could also pop up another alert here saying added to destinations list or something like that to let the user know that it actually worked. Now the only problem is that when you quit the app and start it up again, that destination will not actually be saved. So here it is running in another emulator. If I stop and exit this and then restart it, the destinations are gone. They're no longer there. That's because while it was running, it was saving it into temporary RAM memory, but it was never permanently saved into a database. So that's what we need to do next, is actually save it permanently so that if the app is started up again, the tour is still there. So let's go find TinyDB. And what we want to do is store some values in our TinyDB database. And we want to store two things. We want to store both lists, the destinations list and destinations lat long. Okay, for each one of these, we need to make up a tag name, and then the value to store will be the actual list. So we want to save this list, value to store, and we can grab a text block and make up a tag name for it, and you can call it the same thing. So you can just call it destinations or destinations list or something like that. And similarly, here we want to store destinations lat long, and we want to store the second list, destinations lat long. Okay, so this will save them into the database. But how do we get them back out of the database? Well, that's where we use the get value blocks. And where do we want to do that? Well, we want to do it when the app first starts up. So we need a when screen initialize event handler. This is under screen. So when the app first starts up, when screen initialize, we want to get the values out of the database. Okay, and you have to remember to use the same tags in here. So we want to get the destinations out, right? And we want to get the destinations lat long out. But notice these need something to be plugged into. So where do we plug them in? Well, it gets a value and it returns that value to you. So you've got to put it back into your list. So go back to your list and grab the set blocks for those. So we want to set global destinations to what you get from the database. And similarly, set the global destinations lat long to what you get from the database. Okay. One last thing to fix here is notice there's a value if tag not there. So this would set destinations to the empty string, but remember this one's a list. So you definitely don't want to save an empty string in there. You could put an empty list in there, but a better solution would be to just get what's in the variable right now, which is these two items, right? So if we just do a get global destinations right now, it'll say if you don't find it in the database, just use the value that's in the database, that's in the list right now. So it will always default to those first two locations. But if it finds a longer list in the database that has lots of locations, it'll use that one. So now let's try that one. So this one is a different app here. So let me go to this one. So this one doesn't have any destinations yet, so let me add one. Now it has 3 locations in there, and if I quit it and then restart it, those destinations should still be there. And there we are.